He's not available to come work with us this time. No, he volunteered to do that in Uvalde. That was, felt like he had some strengths that they could use. He's a nice guy. Yes.
What did you eat for lunch?
Wings.
It'll be a very calming,
Them all
Sounds
in a
delicious.
salad. Like,
matter of fact.
Oh, I thought you meant in a salad. I was like, how did you do that?
no, I ate the wings. I
From
was like
where?
this. Marion.
I hadn't been in years. All of a sudden we went.
There's one or two things get.
Yeah.
I've never had the wings. They're very,
Really?
they're very good.
I can't remember.
Listen, I was like this.
This can come out, so with just one of those,
It's like, I need more blue cheese, sir.
what do you want to take the money? I just sent it to print.
No worries. There, that is on. Okay, but you can turn it off if you want and wait until you're ready to talk.
All right. Thank you.
That one was like much, much closer. And I moved in. Is there what I'm doing that for here? Out there? It feels like warmer in here than normal, which I don't want to like complain because it's going to be frosty. Oh, whoopsie.
Testing. Okay.
He gets nervous when he can't hear it. Just really freaks him out. He'll come out here several times and check and make sure that everything's in the right place. He's very conscientious about recording. He does a great job. Exactly.
Thanks, buddy.
Betty, thank you.
It is Lynchburg, yes, it is. It's perfect
Say again?
reading for,
I haven't heard anything from that, but thank you.
never. Well, you gotta be up. This conversation is,
Are we ready to get started?
come on.
Suzanne, could you peek at Russ and see if he's ready to go?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep,
yes,
thumbs up.
okay, I can't see him, so you're gonna be
Yeah, I
my
have to kinda
eyes there
lean.
on him. Okay, thank you. All right. This special meeting of the Judson Board of Trustees is hereby called to order at 5:01 PM. I am very pleased that you have taken time to join us this evening. In compliance with the State Government Code on Open Meetings, tonight's agenda has been appropriately posted. We have established a quorum, and I will call roll. I'm just going to go around this way. Ms. Pichelle?
Renee Pichelle, present.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz?
Present.
Ms. King?
Tanya King, present.
Mr. Macias?
Present.
Ms. Canoyer?
Suzanne Canoyer, present.
And I'm Jennifer Rodriguez, and I'm present. And Ms. Eaton is not here as we speak right now, but we're getting in touch to see if she's on her way. All right. And do we have any citizens to be heard, Betty? No? Okay, we can move on to item 3, conduct planning with superintendent search firm Hazard Young Atea and Associates. Thank you very much for being here. I'll turn it over to y'all.
Thank you. Testing, make sure, good.
Thank you.
I got a thumbs up, so I think I'm okay. Good evening, I'm Nola Wellman, colleagues,
Rick Barry.
Jody Duran,
and we have one more colleague.
I think they want.
Peter Flint.
Peter is in Illinois, and it's cold up there, and it's cold here as well. Thank you very much. I know for this opportunity, we have been working and have some planning, but mostly we have questions this evening to help direct and personalize and customize the search for Judson. You know your community, you know what works for your community. Thank you to our communications department because you'll be helpful during this process. And Ms. Holmes, thank you for all of your work so far as well. We're going to highlight again our approach because you heard it in the presentation, but this time dig in and ask questions and make sure that you understand the 4 phases and are with us on that and what we can expect that you will have answers for us, also what you can expect from us throughout this whole process. Working together. We have, this is the only search we're doing at this time. I think Dr. Flynn just finished his last Friday that he was working on, and so we're all ready to focus on Judson ISD. Together, we represent over 70 years of being in the superintendency, and the gentleman on the reason we have over 70 years is the gentleman on the screen has 34 years of being a superintendent, not just in education, of being a superintendent. And he was not with us last time. So, Peter, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you very much. And members of the board, it's a great honor to be with you this evening and really looking forward to this opportunity and working alongside of you. I started out when I finished college as a classroom teacher and remained a classroom teacher for quite a while, and then went to graduate school, became a teacher of teachers, and ran the teacher preparation program, and eventually got into school administration. As Nola pointed out, I was the superintendent of schools for 34 years. For the past 10 years, I've been retired, well, ostensibly retired, and but I've been working with Hazard Young Atea, and so for the last 10 years, most of the work that I've done has been in Texas, although I have done some work in Iowa and Illinois and a couple other places, but mostly in Texas. And one other thing is that despite all the years that I've had, I am a learner and still learning. And I have begun to learn some things about Judson ISD and look forward to getting to know you and to learn even more. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. You've heard from us, but just briefly, Mr. Berry?
Well, we're obviously
Do you have
very
your-
pleased. Oh,
Are you on?
I'm not now. I think I'm on now. Okay. Well, thank you for your confidence in us. We're honored to be able to work with you here in Judson ISD. We come from all different places. We've had lots of different experiences. Peter Flynn and I started doing searches together about 12 years ago, I think it was now, and I've only been involved with Peter in doing the Texas searches. When Nola was superintendent in Eanes and she announced her retirement, Peter and I got the job to do the search there. And when we finished the search, we already knew Nola, but we got to know her a lot better, having worked with her in that position as we were doing the search. And we invited her to join us. And she helped us go to another level. I think really helped us a lot. And so the three of us have been doing searches since that time. Jody, we've known for a long time as well, and her husband, and we've kept up with her through our consulting, and we asked her to join us just this time. So this is her first opportunity, and we think she's very well prepared and has a lot of great experience, and I'll let her talk. But what you have tonight, this is truly a planning meeting. We're asking you a lot of questions, and the answers to those questions are going to direct how we conduct the search, to customize it to you. And we will make recommendations on almost everything that we bring to you for questions. And sometimes that recommendation will be a hard recommendation based on our experience. Sometimes it might say, you know, here are your options. Doesn't matter to us. This is what we would recommend, but it's not going to impact your search. Our recommendations, primarily, the reason we make those is to help you find the best superintendent you can find. And through our experiences, we found the things that work, we think, as a process to get us to that point where you have a slate that it would be hard for you to make a mistake with the candidates that you have. And so anyway, we'll keep reminding you of all these things as we go through the process. But tonight is a very important meeting in terms of what we do next.
Well, and we just appreciate you devoting this time, because after this, you know, we know what direction to go, and we can really customize our work. So we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Dr. Duran?
Yes, Jody Duran, very happy to be with you all again this evening. Thank you so much. I am the new kid on the block. I've been retired for 6 months. And this is what retirement looks like, and I love it. But we are really excited to help you all find your next leader. And it's the most important decision that you all will make. And we want to make sure that we support you in that process and bring you the best candidates. And certainly our history and networks, and I think you'll be pleased with who we can bring forward to you for consideration. So we're excited about this.
Great. And Jody was in Elgin for 10 years, and I was in Eanes for a little over 10 years. And previously, I shared with you earlier, I was in Colorado, and that is where my grandchildren currently are, and so that's where I've moved to, and it is cold there. Let me just share that with you. I was so pleased. People here are still wearing their coats, and up there, they're really wearing their coats. So, we'll get started. Is there anything on the agenda? I think we asked if you wanted to change anything yesterday, but again, this is a planning meeting. I specifically asked if we could have this format because it's important that we have the interaction. But if there's anything that you want to bring up right now, we'll stop. Okay? Okay. Tonight, we're going to go over the major tasks of the search. The calendar is an important component of that because it is critical that all 7 board members be at the interview process and be at the decision-making points as we go along, and there are several of those. You are going to modify tonight that content, the structure of the process to meet Judson ISD and your community. Personality, frankly, each community has its personality, and that's what we're seeking as your input tonight. And this is your team. So we expect that we will get to know you well over the next couple of months. I should be moving this slide forward, sure. Tonight, we will customize that search. We will get a calendar of the key events and the meetings with you. To understand the steps and what we're doing. There's a point in the process where you will not hear a lot from us, and I'll send you some updates by email. But we're going to be out looking for that candidate that meets that criteria for your leadership profile. So those key events, those meetings that we have, and understanding the steps to the process that we have in place, your responsibilities and our responsibilities. We have an online survey that we will want to get put up on the website in a couple of days. We'll be ready to do that. Actually, I think we're opening it next Wednesday on February the 1st. And we'll talk about the leadership profile tonight. And that is the central, most important document that we will refer to about what the characteristics are for that next leader. And then those key components are communications, our liaison, kind of some of the logistics that will help make the process smoother. We have in the memo that was sent out to you that was quite long and detailed, and there were highlighted areas for decision-making tonight. Just wanted to preview some of those for you in that memo, but we'll be going through that this evening. And I'm going to turn it over to Peter, who's going to talk about our process is in 4 phases. The first one is engage, and Peter's going to go through our 4 phases of our superintendent process.
Thank you, Noah. And remember, you're going to have opportunities throughout the evening to customize each one of these components. But just to tell you what they are, in this planning phase, the planning step of the engage phase, that's what we're doing tonight. And we'll try to at least deal with every aspect of the search from now through the hiring and the follow-up after the hiring of the new superintendent. And then to begin with, after the planning, we'll conduct a survey, and the survey will be about the school district. And when we say that, we mean that specific questions in the survey have to do with where the school district is in terms of various components of operations. It's a very useful tool for you as you take that information and update your strategic plan. But in addition to that, there is a set of components and characteristics for effective superintendents, and it's based upon over 25 years of studies, so it's called a meta-analysis of effective superintendents, and those competencies are listed in that survey. We'll talk more about the specifics of who ought to be involved in taking that survey and what kind of categories you want to disaggregate the information into. In addition to that, the conducting of interviews and focus groups. Obviously, we want to do a one-on-one interview with each member of the board. Then focus groups or general groups or specific orientation of groups will be brought together to engage in conversations, and you'll hear Jody describe what those conversations will be like. And then based upon both the survey information and the survey and the conducting of the interviews, we'll bring to you a synopsis of what we heard throughout that survey and throughout those conversations in what we call a leadership profile. This leadership profile will have a draft of what the desirable characteristics appear to be from all this information for your next superintendent. And then we'll ask the board to consider that at a public meeting, and based upon the board's prioritizing and editing and amending of that profile, eventually adopt that profile, and that becomes the basis for the rest of the search that will help you conduct. On the next slide, we'll see the recruit phase. The next slide, please. Thank you. It says here to advertise, but you know, the advertising actually will take place within a couple of days. Once you decide a couple of things this evening, we'll take the generic vacancy for this position and put it up on the HYA website. As a matter of fact, there already is a listing there, and we already are receiving applications for this position. So the advertising that occurs, people know that we not only list the searches that we're doing as HYA, but also all the searches in the country are listed on our website. And so it's a busy website, 18,000 to 20,000 hits every month. So there's the beginning of the advertising. Now, when we talk about proactive recruitment, we do that because it's important to understand that most of the positions, and I think they might have mentioned this during the presentation originally of our firm, and most of the positions that were hired in Texas over the last 12 years, the people who were hired didn't originally apply for the job. And therefore, it's important to go after people who are happy in their jobs and not particularly looking for a job, and tell them about this great opportunity at Judson ISD. Our firm receives the applications, we'll correspond with all the applicants, and then we do a screening and interviewing and reference check process once you approve the profile. And then in that, we ask people very specific things. We ask them, can they do the work that's described in the profile? And if they say they can, tell us how they did the work so we understand about their administrative style and the way in which they do their day-to-day work. Then we also ask them to upload with their application evidence that shows the success of their work. Then in terms of reference check, we not only look at the people that they list on their resume, but we also talk to people who should be familiar with their work. And we say, did this individual lead this work and accomplish those things? Or were they riding the crest of somebody else's wave? The materials will be gathered by our firm, and we'll upload those materials for the slate of candidates presented to you, and the board will have an opportunity to look those applications over. The board will actually begin the drafting of interview questions. We'll give you some generic questions to start with that you could use for a point of reference, but we want your ideas and your thoughts based upon that profile that you approved of questions that should be asked of people in the interview situation. And so that helps us get to the next phase, which is on the next slide, the select phase. And that's where we take those interview questions that you have told us about, and we might do some minor editing, and we'll pull that together and cluster them, and we'll actually develop a script for you to consider when you interview people. Now, that script will be presented to you in draft form, and you'll make changes in that script and say, these are the questions we want to ask. We'll even suggest that each of you take a part in asking those questions so that all board members have an opportunity to interact with those people who you're considering for the position of superintendent. That night, we'll also present a slate to you of people that we have pre-screened and interviewed based upon your direction and your profile, and we'll help you get ready for that first round of interviews. Not only that, but we'll come to the end of the first round of interviews and we'll debrief with you and facilitate in closed session a way, if you choose, obviously, a confidential search, we'll do that in closed session so that you have an opportunity to tell about the strengths and the concerns of the people that were brought before you. That debrief is very important in getting the group down to a smaller group for a second round of interviews. We'll talk more about that as we go along. We always recommend what we call due diligence, and that consists of a deep background check. And we've got a couple of firms that we'll talk about in a little bit who work with us on that. And then we highly recommend a site visit. In the last couple of years, a lot of boards have been doing site visits. virtually. And those are just as effective, although if the opportunity presents itself without too much travel involved, an in-person one is good as well. And we'll assist you in setting up the terms for negotiation of a contract. And we work for you in that regard, by the way. So that being the case, that's what we do in the select phase. Now, the transition phase, just a couple of brief points, and then I'll pass things on to Jody. But here, the board appoints, and we'll correspond with those people that came in close. We also offer them some feedback to give them some ideas about how they might do things differently or better, or maybe keep on doing the things that they did so well. And but we'll also assist with what we call a success plan or entry plan or transition plan for the new superintendent. And we will be available for some other optional services. We'll talk about that another time. You can see what that listing is, but don't want to take your time tonight to talk about that. Instead, I'll pass it on to Jody so she can talk a little bit about the leadership profile development.
All right. So one of the things we know about Judson ISD, one of your district priorities is to include and engage families and community in the decision-making process, in activities that happen with the district. That's what this process is all about, the leadership profile development. And this is an opportunity for us to identify specific groups that we want to meet with and have interviews with. But one thing you do need to know is that we will ask every group that we meet with the same questions. And you can see them on the PowerPoint slide. Obviously, strengths of the district, challenges facing the district. What are we looking for in our next leader? Personal attributes, expertise, leadership style, administrative style. Also, what is special and unique about this community that's going to draw applicants to apply for this job? And then in some cases, we may have some folks that have someone in mind that they want to recommend, and we'll be discreet about how we handle that. But those are the 5 questions that we will ask all groups. Those sessions generally take 45 to 50 minutes. During that time frame, we are responsible for taking those notes, compiling all of that information, and we will put it into a form where we bring it to you for final approval. As Nola said, this is going to be one of the most important documents that really drive how we begin our recruiting and search process. A couple of things I would just make note of. This is a diverse community, and we probably have many Spanish-speaking families, might even have some Spanish-speaking folks in some of our departments. Generally, we see in our maintenance and operations or child nutrition staff. We want to make sure that everybody feels included and wants to be included, and we want to make sure that we have the ability to have translators there. I believe our communications team will be available to us. I believe they said you've been able to do that. So we want to make sure that everybody understands that. Also, information that we push out, particularly to our community, will be included in Spanish, specifically for our folks. The other thing, one of the other decisions we'll need to make tonight is who will be our direct contact person or people, if it's our communications department, if it's the superintendent's, someone from the superintendent's office, or several people that we want to identify as working with. So those are the main things to think about. Obviously, one of the very first groups, you want to chime in?
I do. I don't know. I am turned on.
Yeah.
I did mention Ms. Rodriguez to Betty that I assumed that she would be my contact person for items related to board and board arrangements.
Yeah.
She's assuming that. I'm assuming that. I just want to verify that.
Yes.
And then related to the focus groups and the community meetings, might we go straight to the communications office and say?
That's fine with me. Is that fine with the rest of the board? Yeah. Okay.
And so we'll get exchange
Is that okay
contact,
with you?
contact information and make sure. I just hate to take Betty's time when all she's going to do is send me to you, so. Sounds good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Obviously, the first group we want to meet with is you, the board. And typically, we recommend individual interviews. Yeah, that's.
Are you okay doing it?
I think
Okay.
I-
You're
I'm doing okay.
talented. I'm not
For my
that
first time.
talented.
But we have the option of doing individual interviews or as a collective board. We typically would recommend doing individual interviews with each of you. And we can do that either by phone or we can do that in person. Again, that is whatever your preference is. And I think
We
it. I think at
typically
each-
do it by phone, if that's, someone prefers us face-to-face. We used to do it all face-to-face, didn't we?
Yeah.
But we've learned we can do that way. So we will set up times with each of you and divide up and make sure each of you has an hour with us.
If you want a face-to-face, I'm in New Braunfels now, so I can do those. I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we need a decision
I
on
think
that at
we're-
this
I
point?
think
or
we're
Yeah, we
Okay.
can leave that up to each person's personal preference.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, moving to other groups. We obviously will have groups external to the organization that we want to include, and then, of course, internal to the organization.
Let me, I'm
yes,
sorry.
go
Joan.
ahead.
Pardon me. In terms of one-on-one, there are some communities or some boards that want us to speak to the outgoing superintendent. Obviously, we figured that was not what would happen here. And our assumption is that the interim would not be someone you would want us to do one-on-one in case there's another avenue for that person. Is there anyone else that you feel it's important that a one-on-one is necessary?
Other than the board.
Nothing's jumping immediately to my mind. I think looking at the groups that you've identified on the memo and things, I think that more or less covers everybody that I would think of. And,
Okay.
but I think that like, if during perhaps like central office or the principal meeting, if there's somebody who like then stands out like, oh, there's more that we need to say here, like, I think you could bring that to us, but
Okay.
I really think that those groups will have confidence with each other and trust with each other to say it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I cannot hear anything. I haven't been able to hear anything since I stopped talking. Could you please adjust that so that I can listen in on the conversation? Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know. Can you hear us now, sir?
No.
No? No.
He's coming around.
Okay.
He's going to fix it. Okay, sorry.
Okay, no, thank you for jumping in. So we have several, we've listed some groups. These may be the ones you want to include. There may be more that you want to include in group meetings. And these would be special meetings specifically for these groups. Or they can be part of an open group. If it's a small subset of folks and it may not warrant a meeting just for that group, maybe they're part of an open group, an open meeting where anybody is invited to attend. But just looking at the memo that we've given you, there's a list of groups there, but on the screen is, I guess we'll look at the, yes, because now you can't see the, hold on a second. We'll start with the memo. Okay, there we go. So these are external to the, you've got an education foundation, perhaps there's some elected officials that you want to include, maybe former board of trustees, community service organizations, your Chamber of Commerce. Are there others, faith community, are there other groups that you believe we need to include in this that's not included on this list right now?
The sweet spot for size of groups is about 15, no more than 25. So if you find one of these groups, maybe, and I'm just this may not be true, but maybe higher ed might only have 3 people. Maybe we could include them with another group. But there may be a group that we're bringing up that, man, that's going to be a very involved, active group, and we want to make sure that that group has its own session.
And if you have a group that's so small that there's not much opportunity for interaction and listening to each other and maybe commenting based on what they hear, that's not ideal either. It's better if we combine some, if they're smaller groups, combine those so they can hear each other, and then ideas will come from that when they hear other people's comments.
So clarifying question is, I know you said that you maybe have 2 days to conduct these meetings. About how many meetings can you fit into those 2 days? I'm imagining the community meetings need to be in the evening, but like if you're meeting with principals or central office, that can be scheduled during the day, so.
Correct. And so we could have, probably after school would be staff and teacher meetings, but maybe support staff or classified staff could be in the day or lunchtime or those kinds of things. And so I'm assuming communications can help us with that. The open meetings, we have had open meetings at 9 in the morning for those who don't want to be away from their children, want their children in school, and then they can come to an open meeting, maybe the PTO or whatever. So we can schedule that way. There'll be 2 of us here, and we will start at 8 in the morning, and they're about 45, 50 minutes. Occasionally, we may need to take a little break, but we can do probably 8 meetings
Okay.
in a 3 and 4 in the afternoon and 1 in the evening.
So what are folks gravitating towards from kind of this menu? Or are there any that, I mean, if they can do a lot, great, let's maximize
And
that.
any
Yeah.
glaring omissions, that would be important to us.
You also have parent groups. You'll have PTOs, PTAs, and there may be other subgroups of parents, maybe a special ed group of parents that are an active voice. Again, it's going to be depending on what you all know or have in your district specifically.
Do you typically advertise these as like open, like here's this meeting for this kind of parent, come to this, or is it like an invitation kind of thing where you try to recruit folks to come?
We've done it both ways. It seems to work best if we can get a list and the 15 members of the Special Ed Advisory and GT Advisory are invited
Okay.
to that meeting. That seems to work the best. Obviously, none of them are closed meetings, and we're not kicking anybody out or anything like that. But we do say if that is not a convenient time for you and that's your meeting, come to one of the open meetings, for sure.
There's a committee, the superintendent committee, Paul?
Yeah, the superintendent has an ESAC, so an employee, so I think that would be a good
That would be
one.
a strong committee for you.
And there was also a student
Teachers
committee too.
and-
It's a mixture of
It's
employees.
Employee Superintendent Advisory Committee. So there's a representative from every campus.
Yep.
Okay,
That's great.
perfect.
So that might be a very like consolidated way to hit a lot of population.
Which also, I didn't note students on this list.
There's
and
a high school group.
high school.
It's
that
on-
identified?
School students.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
On the memo that.
High school
Okay.
students.
Yeah.
On the, yeah.
Okay.
We kind of have found that that's the place that we get the most information is from high
Okay.
school students.
Perfect.
The question is the logistics with multiple high school students. Like, we used to bring them all together.
Well, There's also.
There
a
is a
committee.
student, it's
There's
But
still
there's a
active,
student,
right?
that student
Yes.
advisory.
Yeah,
We have
So
an
that would be the
advisory
route.
group of
That would be
all
the
the high
route.
schools.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's a
like
good-
We're meeting
Feed
on
'em.
Thursday.
We like to feed them.
We meet this Thursday?
Uh-huh.
They meet this Thursday.
Yeah.
If we're ready.
Just throwing
we're
it out
ready.
there.
Do they meet monthly or?
We meet monthly. The next meeting after that wouldn't be until February 15th.
Okay.
Okay.
That's when we're going to start.
I'm sure we would be able to.
But if they're already planning on the 15th, like, I think they said that's about when they plan to
That's about the
start the
They're
community
close
meeting.
and
Yeah,
can do
sure.
community
Okay.
things, sure. And again, I think you brought up virtual, we're happy to do that, but if they're coming physically together,
Yes.
it really kind of works when they're together.
They're
And
very
the
vocal.
pizza is easier when you're not virtually.
That's why they were chosen.
Do these groups look about right on your foundation, appointed officials, some past board members, community leaders?
I'm not seeing any glaring omissions on this list for
And
me.
you can help us with how we might gather
Organize those.
groups.
Of course.
It's, obviously, we want anybody who wants to contribute to be able to be there, but if every person on the executive board can't be there, it's okay. We'll get the feedback we need by having them.
And if they can't, I mean, they have the opportunity open, plus the survey. There are several opportunities to participate.
Okay.
Okay, it's not working again, my little guy in there.
Can Mr. Flynn hear now?
I think he can hear.
Okay.
Peter, can you hear us?
I think not.
Maybe he cannot. Does he need to maybe call in again?
No.
Text him and see.
He might,
Okay,
he
there we
might
go.
have his on mute.
Oh, let me see. Yeah, now we're back on. Thank you.
Did you,
I
do
have to
we,
click here every time I move on.
Okay.
what do we
thank you.
do about him?
He can't hear.
We would have to stop the Teams meeting and then restart it again. See if they'll come back.
Do you want me to tell him to sign off and come back in?
Can you ask him to check to see if he's not, his volume on his side, on his computer? Make sure that's working?
Yes.
Is your volume working?
No, your sound isn't working. My volume is fine.
Okay,
There's no problem on my end. I've tested it.
okay,
And
wanna leave
occasionally
him
I'll
on
get,
phone?
I'll get a little phrase
So he
that
can
somebody
hear?
is saying,
okay.
but generally
The table
speaking,
microphones
they've turned my sound off or
aren't
something.
very good. The table microphones, they don't pick up a lot of the,
Would you
Sounds-
want us to leave the telephone on,
So he can hear us, yeah.
Peter?
If that's, I guess,
Let's-
I guess.
let's
It's
see.
better than nothing.
Let's see how it goes, okay? Let's see if that will work. All right, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Peter, we're talking about the groups, and we just finished talking about the external groups. We're moving to internal groups, and these are the groups that we've are specifically targeting. Obviously, teachers aren't listed here, but teachers and other certified staff would be included in this as well. Are there any others that you think that we're missing from this group?
I think nothing's missing, but a comment I have is like, I wonder if it might be possible to do like a public meeting in the morning and the evening in different parts of the district too, because, geographically, we're spread
Yes.
out. There might be,
Yes.
I want to make sure it's as accessible as possible to everybody.
That's great.
Yes, we can. And if you would like a virtual open meeting at
Yes,
some
agreed.
other time, we could set that up as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
So it would be 2 open in person and 1 virtual open meeting. Okay.
I think that actually addresses what this says right here. Just looking for as many opportunities as we can with open meetings to include as many people as we can in this process. And I think that is ultimately our goal, whether virtual or in
Yeah.
person, and on covering the geographical area of your district.
And how versed, this is a question maybe for Nicole, like how versed is staff in like, if instead of, because if you have a meeting for teachers, for example, at one campus, obviously you're going to get a lot of teachers from that campus, but other teachers might not be able to participate. How versed are people in using Teams or Zoom or something like that? If you wanted to do like, this is a staff-specific virtual meeting to make that more accessible.
I think that that would be a good option. And
Okay.
we've been using Teams and virtual meeting sessions since COVID.
Okay.
Meeting and
Yeah.
things like that, and we're still using that as options. So I think that that would be a good option if we went that route.
Okay. And then maybe have people RSVP, so it's not getting more than 15 or 20, like more than 25.
Right.
But that.
We have
giving that
done
option.
50, but it's not.
Then nobody,
gets
everybody
the
gets to say one thing and it's not a real
Right.
discussion, so,
Not as
yeah.
effective.
Right.
Okay, so we'll look at a virtual option there, too.
Yeah.
And of course, if they want to come in person, that anybody can come to the community meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is right. All right, boss. All right. And then, of course, we've talked about the virtual option as well, just as another alternative to making sure everyone has access. So I think,
in terms of the community meetings in person, we'll talk about the dates that we would do that. If the board wants to, we hear you. Peter.
Yes.
We were hearing you, whatever paper you were doing. If the board members want to attend those, I would ask that we schedule a board member for each meeting, and that you would open the meeting, greet people, thank them for coming, and then turn it over to us to facilitate, if that meets if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Some communities, the board doesn't want to be there at all, but in talking with Ms. Rodriguez, we were thinking maybe that would be.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the main thing you don't want to happen is for you to come and the people start talking to you. They need to talk to us. We work for you. You can listen and observe, which would be great. But if you happen to be in the front,
Nope.
they're going to be looking at you. They're going to be wanting you to respond, and that's not the appropriate thing to do in a search. So
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so
All right.
that's what we'll do in terms.
On to you, the online survey.
Okay, the next part of the input that we're getting from the community is the online survey. This is an opportunity for everyone to go online. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete the online survey. Oops, I lost him. And
That's because I can hear now.
oh, okay, great.
You were getting feedback.
Great. Thank you. The online survey is a compilation of characteristics of superintendents over a meta-analysis of research that's done. And you ask people to judge their priority. Do they think this is more important than this, and where it is? When we were doing our search, one of my board members called and he said, this isn't fair. All 12 of the characteristics are important. And we said, yes, they are all important, but to you, which ones are more important for Judson, for Eanes at this point in time? And that's where you start to get the direction, because it's important that we know where you are in history and what people are thinking. The survey allows for 6 aggregate groups, and there will be printout and all that sort of thing. Administrators, Board of Trustees, administrators, community members, parents, support staff, teachers. And if you want to have students participate, we can aggregate your 7 separately by hand and let the students have one of the aggregate groups. If that would, most boards do that. Most boards say, yes, we'll pull yours out do yours by hand. We will not have any identifying information. We'll just do those by hand. And then we'll have administrators, community members, parents, support staff, teachers, and students as your 6 aggregate groups. Is that good? Okay. We will start the survey on February the 1st, and we will close it on February the 24th. I think that's, or the 23rd, one of those 2 days. And then we will begin putting together the leadership profile, because that will close just at the time that we're finishing the focus groups. We can remind people, please go online, please do your survey. And by the way, if you're a parent in the district and an employee, you can fill it out as both. So you can say, I'm as a parent, I got this idea, but as an employee, you know, I have this. So we can do it in Spanish and in English. If you have any other languages, it does cost $450 to translate it. But we were thinking maybe those 2 languages would cover the vast
I
majority.
think that's most.
If we would need someone who would have to have something translated, I guess we can ask them to reach out if they speak another language. You okay on the online survey? Okay. Communication is critically important. We will communicate with you as you are used to that. It seems to have centered mostly on email through your district email. As long as I don't get filtered out, Ms. Rodriguez, then we're in good shape.
Their contract went to my spam folder.
It's like, oh no, there must be a problem. I haven't heard from her. Yes, it sounds like it. We have a board portal. We will give you access through your Judson ISD email, and I will give each of you a discrete password to get into the portal. It will provide, this agenda will go into it. It will provide all the documents that will be provided for you, as well as the applications and all of that will be in that portal. There's also some research information about questions and kinds of questions and how to conduct interviews and that sort of thing. In the updates, we will update you frequently, you know, every couple of weeks, so we make sure you know that we're still out there working. Provide information to communications. We would ask that you have a separate page and a button on your home page that links to superintendent search page, and that will also link to HYA when they want to fill out an application. It will link there. We will support you in helping with information on the website about the process and about the search, and it will help in developing we will help in developing those materials for communications to the public. It will have our calendar for the search on it after you decide on that, and we will respect whatever forms of communication. But if email is the best, that's what we'll use. Just do a board update periodically.
Yep.
Okay? Again, the next one is about the portal and kind of what it looks like. You can get it on your phone, your tablet, your laptop. Believe it or not, there was a time we actually demoed this because people didn't know what a portal was. It wasn't that long ago. But now people are very familiar with the portal. And we used to make notebooks. That wasn't that long ago. 8 or 9 people coming in. It was a good exercise, you know, for them to carry their 10-pound notebook around. So we now will have the portal for you to do. Mr. Berry, I'm going to pass it on. Let me just pause for a minute. Are you okay with kind of where we are and any questions you have?
When will the portal be set up?
In the next couple of days. I'll get the passwords from the home office, and we'll get those set up real quickly. And then if you need support, we do have tech support. Sometimes something gets quirky, and so we can provide that as well. Mr. Berry?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. On your agenda memo, what we're going to talk about right now is at the bottom of page 3 and top of page 4, but it's on the slide, so you can just follow the slide. So there are a number of things we're going to talk about here that will determine what you decide tonight is going to determine how we conduct a search for Judson ISD. Some really important decisions. We're not going to ask you to vote. In fact, what we're going to ask you to do is come to a consensus. And we'll answer questions, we'll make recommendations, and then we'll, if there's any discussion you want to have about it, we can discuss. When we get to the point where I think, the questions are all answered, discussions, some of these will be pretty quick, some of them may not be, but then I'm going to ask, do we have consensus? And I'm going to look around and make sure nobody shakes their head no. Because if you shake your head no, we need to keep talking. Okay, we don't have consensus. And I'm going to ask the board president, Madam President, will you confirm? I think we have a consensus. Will you confirm we have a consensus? These are too important, the decisions are too important to leave up to chance of whether everybody's on board. And so, and you'll see, I think, as we go through here. So the first one that I'll talk about is how we conduct the search in terms of whether it's confidential or it's open. What that means is, are the candidates' names confidential? Okay? And we have a hard recommendation to make on this, and it's in your best interest. We believe it's in your best interest to have a confidential search, because we found that a lot of candidates, the first question, we know when we call and recruit a candidate who's happy where they are, they're going to ask about 3 questions. The first question is going to be, is this a confidential search? They are not interested in having their name out there and their board and their community and staff finding out that they're being considered for another job because they've got a good job. Why would they want to do that? Their family's happy, so think about that. Put yourself in their position. We just won't be able to get the best candidates for your superintendent. So, having said that, our recommendation is confidential search. First item. Okay. Any questions or discussion on that issue? That seems to go pretty quickly. Every search we've done in Texas has been confidential. Okay. I'm going to say we have consensus. Madam President, do we have consensus? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is how to handle internal candidates. Now, I'm not assuming whether you have internal candidates or not. You may or may not. You may have an idea. The issue is, how do we handle it if we have an internal candidate? So here's what our recommendation is. Let us compare those candidates. Let them apply if they want to. We will compare them to the other candidates, and we will make a recommendation as to whether they measure up to the ones that we have coming to you, and they should deserve an interview with the board. We don't believe in, just giving interviews to anybody because they're this or that, whether they live in San Antonio or they live out of state or in state or they're an internal or whatever. We think they should be the best candidates. That's how you will get the best candidate if we don't spend your time and our time talking to people who aren't going to be in the best candidates just because of where they are. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions or comments about that? We will do that work for you. And in a way, that kind of protects you. You didn't have to make that decision unless we recommend you consider them. Okay, question?
Sorry, I don't have my mouth full now, so I'll try to speak into the microphone. I think that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm just curious. I want to make sure that we know who that is happening to and
Yes.
things like that throughout the process. So you would
will
still
know.
share that with
Yes.
us and things.
You will know if we have internal candidates. We will make you aware. And if we get to that point where they're going to be included, just like every other candidate, we will talk to you about why they were included or why they weren't included.
Okay.
Okay? So yes, you will know as we go if we have internal candidates. And one of the things that we'll caution you about throughout this process, don't listen to rumors. Lots of rumors can float around about, that's one topic. Other topics about who are the candidates you're going to interview. All kinds of rumors float around these school districts. Some are worse than others. Most of them have no basis in fact. If they have a rumor that has any basis in fact, it's usually just a wild guess that somebody had because they know a few people. Not because they have any information, because we're not going to share. You just told us it's going to be confidential. We're not going to share their names with anybody. It'll just be us. We'll be the only ones besides you, and you won't know until we decide who to bring to you and recommend them in a closed session, and you approve that, yes, that's who we want to interview.
Okay.
Okay? Okay,
Is
so
everybody
we have
okay,
consensus?
Fine with that?
I'm good.
Yes.
Internal candidates will be handled according to our recommendation.
I need to break that down a little bit. So if the board has final say on the internal candidate, then I'm comfortable with it. But to arbitrarily just yield it to you guys as like you will be the final say, I'm not comfortable with that.
No, everything is your final say.
Once we see that list, and
Yeah.
if we feel there's merit to it, then we as a board can weigh in on if we're
Absolutely.
going to accept that
Yeah.
candidate or not.
Absolutely.
I'm comfortable with that part.
Yeah.
But certainly would like to look at your recommendation, and that's why we brought you in.
Yeah.
But I suspect that as we look at candidates across the country, across the state, that there's going to be sort of this alignment in their level of experience. So I wouldn't want to eliminate
Right.
candidates internally if we're going to be interviewing candidates that are similar outside
you
of this
Yeah.
district.
Yeah.
So as long as we have the ability to say, you know what, we appreciate the recommendation, but I think consensus is we're willing to at least have the interview.
Absolutely.
You will always have that.
You always-
will always have that
And I'm
on
okay.
any decision.
Okay.
When we make a recommendation like that, it's going to be an executive session. The only people who will know that they weren't in our recommendation will be you.
I'm fine.
Okay?
I was participating in one search in which the internal candidate was not recommended. The board decided they wanted to just go ahead and offer that interview to that person. Later, the board said, no, they didn't quite measure up, but we feel like that was an important step. The flip is, just the time that it takes and giving someone the idea that they might measure up when they don't. So,
Yeah. If they
That's
haven't-
happened here also.
yeah.
Yeah, if they haven't been evaluated, that puts you in a pretty awkward position if they haven't been evaluated by a third party, which that's what you hired us to do, so.
But
Okay.
absolutely
Yeah.
your decision.
We're with you 100% on that. Okay, now the next item, all the districts we've worked with have also gone with our recommendation on this, and this one may take a little more explanation. It's what are the qualifications you want us to post for this position? Okay, here's why we make our recommendation that we do. We believe that to get the absolute best pool of candidates for you, that we need to have a wide funnel at the beginning. We don't need to eliminate people based on an arbitrary qualification that somebody thinks is important. Okay? And I'll give you some examples. Doctorate required, doctorate preferred, or no statement related to that at all. Let us evaluate people whether they have any of those qualifications or not. We have found, and we can tell you, I'm not going to give any names out here, but we have found some of the best candidates have none of those things. they have the requirement to be certified as a superintendent, which means they have a master's degree, they have 3 years of experience, or the only other way is for the commissioner to give them a special exception. And there have been, we had one of those where the person wasn't even certified, but got it was somebody actually we recruited because they had tremendous experience and they applied. And then we began, at that point, we think, well, we actually need to be recruiting that person. And ended up, that person got the job. And the commissioner granted the exception. So it can happen. It's the only one we know of that's happened like that, but we were involved in it, so we were very familiar with it. But we really believe, and we can show you if you want to, we want to do that in executive session because we're talking about personnel, but examples of some of the best superintendents in the state or the country who don't have a doctorate or don't have 10 years of experience as a superintendent. Some of the best candidates are deputy superintendents in a larger district where they have a lot of responsibility, or an area superintendent in a larger district where they got 25 or 30,000 kids under their leadership. So those are things that need to be considered. And if you put a statement out there, then you're held to that statement unless you make the exception. And it's better for us just to go out and find them first, then go through, the interview process, the checking them out, verifying their experience, verifying when we interview them, do they meet your profile? And when we go through that process, we're confident you're going to get the best candidates. And we've had other people in the past without any of those qualifications. So we recommend, let us start with a wide funnel. We'll bring it down to you, to the best people that we can find. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about that? Discussion?
Well, typically, are you suggesting that we open a wide enough net where individuals who do not have a PhD can apply?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I mean, historically, we've taken PhD level only at that superintendency to interview, because obviously, at least for me, I think that's a prerequisite for the position. And historically, it has been for a number of years. So I wouldn't want to spend time looking at someone without a PhD and just eliminate them from the process right now. But again, that's not my call, but that's just simply historically what we've done.
I'll say this. Most of the people now in districts of your size or larger will have that. It won't be a PhD, it'll be an ED.
Yes.
Okay, it'll be a doctor, okay.
Yeah.
If you put PhD on there, you're really going to limit.
And I meant doctor, so thank you for clarifying.
Okay, but you really limit the opportunity to look at the best superintendents. And chances are, in your district, probably, 8 or 9 times out of 100, you're going to have somebody with a doctorate that applies and that we bring to you. But that doesn't mean that the best superintendent for Judson ISD that we talk to will have a doctorate. I guarantee you that doesn't mean that.
And if I could add to what Rick has been talking about, one of the reasons why we talk about these qualifications is because it's more important to talk about what is it that they know and are able to do and have demonstrated evidence of that, irrespective of the fact that they have a doctorate.
And I think that what I hear you saying is those things would really have to outweigh not having a doctorate. And that's okay, because that's your value system. And what we're saying is it'll be pretty rare, but there may be that person that we say, we know this person doesn't have a doctorate, but we have this overwhelming amount of evidence that the work that they've done has been so exemplary, we want to share with you. If you've put in the qualifications required, then we can't bring them to you.
We won't even talk to them if you
And
put
so
that qualification in there.
if in your deliberations, you just can't get over that doctorate, that's fine. It's just, we can't bring them to you if you put that on the requirements. So that's the reason we recommend that is, it's rare, but it does happen.
I suspect that we'll have more in-depth conversations about what that criteria needs to look like. Because again, asking that question now, based on that logic, makes sense. But I won't support anybody with the master's. I would like to see the doctorate degree because of qualification.
Right.
But if this person with a master's degree who's been a superintendent, we need to know if we're going to receive people with experience as superintendent, or we're going to be looking for someone who's been an administrator, like an assistant coming up.
Right.
That makes a difference.
Absolutely.
I don't know where you'll see a candidate with 6A level experience, district our size, command a record of success at the level that we need it to be.
Right.
But maybe. Again,
We know some. I guarantee you.
Maybe,
It's a possibility, and that's
Maybe.
the point, is we would ask not to exclude that, should
Yeah.
it come up.
Yeah. Now, at this point, it's just a matter of, are you going to exclude those for further consideration? That's what we're asking. Do you want to exclude those people if, in our opinion, and it won't be just an opinion, it'll be based on everything about their experience, their success, the success they've had, all the things that they bring to the table. Do you want to eliminate that possibility, or do you want to reserve the right to make that decision when you see how they compare?
What you're saying is that, you're going to make sure that you're bringing people who have a track record of success, that have proven that they can do this at the scale of Judson ISD.
Yes.
And it's most likely that they will have also the paper credentials. However, we want to cast the net as wide as possible right now and then narrow it down later.
The person
That's what
I was
I'm hearing.
talking about a while ago who had a master's, didn't have a superintendent's certificate, didn't have a doctorate. That person was hired as a Texas district. I'm not going to give you the name, but you'll figure the candidates out because they had 80,000 kids. So it's a sophisticated school district and a very diverse, complicated school district. The person was successful there for 10 years before he retired.
It is possible, depending on their career path.
And he had been a successful superintendent in a previous district of your size.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is, you're not looking for that new superintendent first year, and they don't have the credentials. That's scary.
Right.
We understand.
We do understand. And they don't have a track record.
We absolutely understand that. Our leaning would probably be more somebody that's had experience as superintendent, but there are those occasionally. So,
Yeah, I'm supportive of making it
Yeah.
as open as possible and then we can narrow it down later.
Yes.
Okay? Or do we have consensus on that then?
Maybe a reluctant consensus, but yes.
I still would be very hard pressed to support someone without a doctorate.
Are you okay at this stage?
Yeah, but at this stage, I'm okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
this is just in the recruitment phase.
Yeah.
This isn't selecting
That's fine.
the final person.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you about it before we even bring them to you. You won't have to wait till you've interviewed. I mean, if you all decide that, hey, no, we saw what you have to say and what their experience is, we're still not interested. That's fine, because that's your decision.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Okay, let's see. The next one is related to salary and benefits.
Let me ask.
Did I
Rick.
miss one?
Yes, in terms of the first round of interviews, there was a time in the last 2 to 3 years that we've had that first round virtually.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess there's a component that you don't quite get of a leader if they're not in the room. but we certainly have done that. I think, Peter, you just finished one that they did the first round of interviews virtually. So do you have a preference about that? We would lean toward bringing them in so you can see how they command a room and how they speak and all of that. But it's, it's an expense to do that. And so we just wanted to run that by you.
That's at the district's expense? Sorry. The district's expense, or is that at the candidate's expense?
If you bring them in, it's the district's expense. I mean, you can't expect people that are happy in their jobs to pay their own expenses and not get the job, or not to be considered as a finalist.
Personally, I'm okay, especially in the first round where we're narrowing the field with like giving them the option, like saying it's preferred that you come if that's local to you. I'm also trying to be a good steward of our district's finances, right? And that's not included in your search fee, is my understanding. That would be an additional expense.
Correct.
So I would be fine with doing a virtual interview for somebody who is maybe not local to San Antonio.
Yeah.
But I don't speak for the board. That's my personal opinion. So I'd be curious what.
Yeah,
other
we need
folks
to
think.
hear a discussion about
About
that.
how many interviewees?
Either 5 or 6.
Yeah.
6, and then just an idea, usually what do those fees run?
Well, it depends on where they're coming from. They're going to be if they're out of state, they're going to be flying in. Depends on how much notice you give them. The fares are higher at the last minute. They vary from time to time. We recommend they stay in a level of hotel, motel that's one your employees would stay in when they go to a conference or something. So other than the travel, it's pretty standard type expenses. There'll be a few meals involved. And we're talking about 6 people max. We recommend you not interview more than 6 people. And we've seen this a couple of times when the board have insisted to have 7. They get confused. They start mixing up just with one more. And in fact, with 5 or 6, you can actually have that happen. Because, I mean, these are pretty intense interviews, and you're asking a lot of, in-depth questions, and you've seen all these different experiences and the places they're from and all this in a very short period of time. And so one of the things we do, we don't sit in the interviews with you, but we help you debrief so you will keep them straight. We know about them, and if somebody says something about one that's actually about the other, we'll correct you because we know. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but it has happened. And so, so 6 is usually the max that we recommend. I can't say that, if you say 7, we actually had one district that said 7, the 7th person, they got the job. So, and we had a really hard time. We shared with the board ahead of time. We had a hard time, and we told them why, of coming to a decision about who would be number 6 and who would be number 7. And so they knew that going up. We won't,
Just interview both.
Yeah, just interview both of them. If you want to, we just said, hey, this is a time where you might want to consider interviewing both of them. But we don't, when we give you the 5 or the 6, we don't rank them. The only time we will do that is when we tell you, okay, here's 7, 8, and 9, because usually boards want to know, well, who was it that came close, and why did they not get included? And we are always prepared to have that discussion. And that would be a point at which you would say, well, we really want to interview 7.
I think if you wanted to limit that expense, that is a possibility. You could say, up to a certain amount of money, we will reimburse expenses per candidate. That's a feasibility. People that drive, will just drive and go back home,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So typically, we bring 6. Sometimes 5 is really where the big cutoff is. And just to get 6, just to say have 6, I guess we would ask you to give us that discretion so that when we come and we say any of these 5 can do the job really well. And now it's your decision, or any of these 6 can do the job really well. We don't want to have to really dig just to get that 6th person, if 5 is really the right number.
Part of this discussion probably also ought to include the fact that we recommend the 6 for the first round, and then we recommend that you have a session, and we'll help facilitate that with you, but it's your session and your discussion and decision of narrowing that down to 3 for a second interview. We recommend the second interview definitely be in person, and that if possible, they bring their spouse or significant other to that second interview. Not to sit in on the interview with the board, but to be there so you can meet them and interact with them over a couple of days.
I'm curious, I've heard that before, and it strikes me as weird, like just bluntly speaking, so I'd love to hear like why that is.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing, so.
I'll give you we all have different opinions. I'll tell you my opinion, because I had to go through that once. I was promoted in Arlington internally, and then I was recruited to go to Cypress Fairbanks. And at the Cypress Fairbanks interview, that's the procedure they used. Bring your spouse back to the second interview. We had a dinner with all of us. I had an interview after the dinner. My wife went with the spouses. They socialized while we were having an interview. And she was at the dinner. One of the things they did, we don't tell you to do this, but they did at that one, was at the dinner we had 2 tables. I sat with, it was spouses of the board members too, and I sat at one table, my wife sat at the other. And for dessert, we switched tables. That was what the board wanted to do. So they all got to, socialize with my wife. And now, they'll tell you in both districts that the reason they hired me was because of her.
I know
And
her.
she knows her, so they both know her, so, and they understand why. She was my greatest asset during the interview process and while I was superintendent. She was a asset in the community, in the district, and I think everybody in the world that knows her knows that.
I don't think that's an unusual protocol.
Yeah.
I don't think it is either. I've just never understood it because I don't know if that
Package deal. You
want
another
to
package,
judge
you're
a
getting
person based
Well,
on
and
their spouse.
I'm telling you.
And what if they aren't?
Yeah, well, you can tell, we had one district where the second interview, and we had 3 people come back with their spouses. When we got down to deciding, they got down to 2, and they were having a discussion. One of the board members said, I don't think his wife wants to come. She picked up on that, and she was right. We knew that, we found out that, but that board member picked up on that in that dinner process.
Yep.
And it caused a discussion that eliminated him from being the final candidate.
I've seen that in municipal government.
Now, here's another point to make. I believe that you are about to enter a relationship that's very much like a marriage between the board and the superintendent. There's another party in that marriage that's really important, not just to the district, but to the family, making the transition and being happy where they live. That's a pretty important thing you might want to evaluate.
The support of that spouse. in
So
the
let me
process.
just jump in with 2 words. And the 2 words are if appropriate. We always say to people, we would like you to bring your spouse or significant other, if appropriate. And they make the final judgment call on that. And I can also tell you that it sometimes makes a difference and it sometimes doesn't make a difference.
That's right.
Without giving you specific examples, which we could give, but just understand, we always put that in there if appropriate, and we let the final judgment rest with the candidate.
And if I could just say too, in the previous searches that we've done and that I've been a part of, we've included spouses in those searches. It just makes sense. Like you, my biggest asset is my wife as well. And people need to understand that extension because you need that family support.
You do.
So as you indicated, that would be something interesting to pick up if the spouse was on board. Because, obviously friction can happen, and how effective will the employee potentially be if there's turmoil at home and all of those things.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually a very good idea.
Right.
Well, it's a good question. It's a good question. So do we have well, we're not talking about
No.
consensus on the 6th. We're not talking about consensus on that, right?
So the question at hand is, do we want to have the first round of interviews in person?
Yeah, that's the question.
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
So I would prefer having them in person.
Yeah.
And I think it's a worthwhile investment. I've been a part of enough interviews in my own personal experience with my own staff. People just feel different interviews. And to be fair to everybody, including ourselves and the community that we represent, in person is probably a pretty good investment.
I agree. Body language is important, and you can't read that when all you see is this much of them. And eye contact, and they don't know where to look, in it virtual. So for me, in person is better. And I do consider the fact that this is something important to do.
Yeah.
And while I don't advocate for just throwing money at everything, sometimes money well spent
Yeah.
makes a difference here.
That makes total sense. And I live in such a virtual world in my
Yeah.
work right now. Everything is online. Like,
Right.
I'm going to be going through job interviews next week, and they are on Zoom.
The spouse doesn't come the first round.
Right. Just the second
Right,
round.
it's
yeah.
just the second round.
Right.
Yeah. It's that's an important decision, though, and that can be made later if you want to about inviting
Okay
them or
with
not.
in person?
Yeah, actually, if we decide to do virtual, they will all be virtual, but my preference is in person as well. But we are in a technology age, so virtual will be another asset of, can they command that as well? But we'll find, if they can do well in person, we can assume they'll do well virtual.
Yeah.
When you determine the rankings, though, is the search firm conducting some interviews, or is it just based on their paper qualifications?
We're conducting
We
interviews.
conduct
Okay.
Yeah,
And that, I assume you're doing over the phone or
We'll
on?
do that
virtually. Okay.
virtually. Yeah,
Well, virtually, but if it's possible to do it in person, we do.
we do.
Okay.
I'm open to either, or has there been a lot of technology issues with virtual? And has that been something that has created issues with the interview process?
I don't think we've had a
We
board
haven't had a
that,
lot. I actually wrote an article about this for the candidates because they need to present themselves the best that they can. And virtual is different than in person. They prepare differently. They can't be searching, looking down when you're trying to interact. There are things that are different with the virtual. And so while it might be convenient for one candidate to only do virtual, I think it puts them at a disadvantage if everybody else is in person.
well, I can give you an example, too, of one time, and I think that was when Peter and I were doing a search, just the two of us, and we had a candidate on paper who looked like as good as we could find from out of state. This is for a significant Texas school district. And at that point, we weren't doing virtual. I don't even know what Zoom was in those days. And I don't know if it existed. So we made the decision, we are going to interview these people. All of them have to come down here and see us in person. And so we got him down here, and we sat there and had that interview, and we just had the other 10 or 12 or 14, whatever we had. And as soon as that was over, we looked at each other and we both said, there is no way that guy will fit in this school district. And we did not pick up, we talked to him on the phone, we had all of his resume, we checked out his references, everything looked great, but it was obvious to us he wasn't going to fit, so we didn't have further consideration. And that's only one time that it's been that, much difference, but we think it makes a difference in.
I guess what has Judson been doing all these years?
It's always been in person.
Always in person, yeah.
And so one of the other things that would be harder to maintain confidentiality when we're doing virtual, because we have to have the technical support. And so
Yeah.
that's another issue there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The other one, I think the next one is on salary and benefits. And so here's what we recommend at this point. What we think, and all of the boards we've worked with in Texas in the last 12 years have agreed with this, is you need to be concentrating now on finding the best superintendent that you can find for Judson ISD. Don't be thinking about salary because you don't know what it is at this point. We don't either. We'll find out for you, and if something is way out of line for what, I mean, one of the things we're going to ask you for tonight, we need your former superintendent's contract. We need to know what you've been doing, okay? And once we know that, then we can, when we look at these applications, we can see, is this in the ballpark? Is this something y'all would even consider? And then, but the main thing is we want to find the best superintendent. And if we get the best superintendent in here, our recommendation is don't lose the best superintendent that you can find over $20,000 or $30,000. What do you got, a $250 million budget? And that's the same thing. You get value for bringing people in here. It's, if you spend money wisely, it doesn't mean you take the cheapest deal. Get the best you can get for the best you can get. And that's all about finances and being good stewards. If you have to do the search over again in a couple of years because you didn't get the best person, that's a lot more expensive than getting the best person and paying a little more. So what we say is right now, don't even think about that. We'll think about it for you. And one of the things that I told you when we had the interview was we will put together comparables for you. So when you make a decision about negotiating with a particular person, you'll know what the comparables are for other districts like you, districts of your size. And one of the things we'll ask you when we do that and we gather that information is, what are the districts in Texas that you like to compare yourself with? Who are those districts? Who are the districts you aspire to be? The districts that you say, if we could be the best we could be, that's what we want to be like. Who are those districts? You probably have some in mind. Most boards do. And so those are we want to give you those comparables of what you want to be, what you are, what everybody else who's like you, what they're doing, and then what are the ones you aspire to be. And share that information, and when you make that decision, it won't be us, it'll be you. What are you going to base it on? You're going to base it on all of that information and hopefully on the best superintendent you can get. So is everybody okay not worrying about salary and benefits right now? That's just one more thing to add to your plate to worry about. And it's all unknown at this point in time. But once we get down to where you need to be thinking about it, we'll give you good information so you can make an informed decision. And everything ends up in a negotiation. You're going to be, when you find the right person, your attorney probably will be negotiating with their attorney for a contract. But we're going to share with you what's in most of these contracts too, not just the salary, because a lot of them have a lot of other things. I'm sure you do too, but a lot of them have more than others. And that's a technique that some districts use to attract people, is the package, the whole package. Okay, so we're okay not worrying about that? We'll take that off your plate right now.
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
I like the wording that you have, that salary will be regionally competitive. I think
Yeah,
that's.
for similar districts.
Well, my question would be that we probably should have an idea of what we're willing to pay. Because obviously we do not want to go through the exercise and we're picking someone up in North Dallas who's phenomenal, but they're making $350,000, maybe even $400,000. If we're not willing to go there, I mean, no matter how much we like them, we do not want to spend $400,000. I feel like we've wasted their time and our time in trying to interview them. So we have to have a range, in my opinion, that we can talk through that this board will be comfortable with, because right now the current salary is $250. You add 20 for benefits, it's $270. So we as a board, are we committing, because the caliber of expertise that we attract based on our compensation is going to be clear. We'll get people from North Dallas who want to make $400,000 if we're willing to go there. So I feel we probably need a better handle, because I do not want to get to the negotiation table and then we're like, there's no way we'll ever pay that much. Sorry, let's start again. And that's my concern. I don't want to go through time-consuming activities if we've identified a candidate that's strong. And then we have to arm wrestle about, are we going to pay them or not? And so that's where I'm not entirely comfortable with that approach, because again, I want the best candidate. But we also need to be understanding of what we're willing to pay. So that's where I have a concern.
Well,
A couple things.
yeah, I agree with that.
And right, we don't want to be way out of the ballpark with the candidate, right? But I think there might be a couple ways to mitigate that. One, regionally competitive. I think they'll do their research on what other San Antonio area districts pay. And I don't think we're out of that ballpark significally. We might be a little, I don't know. Yeah, we're in the middle. And we're a mid-size, and we're in the middle of the size-wise too. I think the other thing that I would maybe ask you all is like, is that part of the application, like a question like, what are your salary expectations?
Absolutely.
So that we can see coming in
Absolutely.
what they are, okay.
Yeah, that is, we require them to put that information on there. In fact, and we ask to see their contracts too.
So we would know that going
It's public
forward.
information. I mean, yeah.
So, yeah, we already know.
Yeah. Now, I guess the question I would ask, and I don't have a problem with what you're talking about in terms of here's what we're willing. Obviously, you have to be willing to pay this or there's no need to enter into negotiation. I would say that most of the 90% of the districts that we have placed superintendents in, the boards have negotiated a contract higher than what they thought they would when they went into it. When you see the latest comparables, they're probably going to be higher than what you expected. Most boards do see that as higher than what they expected. And so I just think if you spend a lot of time worrying about that, and we're not going to, and I can tell you, I mean, we know the superintendents that are making $400,000 and $500,000 a year. I don't think we're going to be recruiting those to come here. They're not going to want to talk to us if we do. They're not going to want to take a pay cut, and they know you're not willing to pay that much. Now, some of them are in smaller districts than yours that are making $350,000, $400,000, and one or two even more that are in smaller districts than yours. And so, I mean, it's not that that's not out there and that some boards aren't willing to pay it, but most of them aren't. You know, there is a range that most boards want to be in. And so if you're thinking we're going to recruit somebody that makes $400,000 or $500,000, we're not for this job. But if you're giving us some idea of where you're at now, wouldn't be a bad idea for us as we just evaluate, you know, whether to talk to somebody or if they contact us. One of the things that we will share, all candidates, that's usually one of their first 3 or 4 questions. What are they paying the current superintendent? That determines a lot of times whether they want to talk. And so, you know, we will share that with them. We want them to know. And so I don't think you're going to see us having a problem. I do think you're going to see, I think your eyes are going to be opened as to what the market is. And that's up to you at that point, what you want to do. And we will not tell somebody that they're in the slate unless you say they're in the slate. We're just talking to them at that point. We're talking to them to see if there's an interest, and they're talking to us because they may or may not have interest. So it's kind of a back and forth kind of thing, but if y'all want to talk about it, I don't have any problem at all. I think we all would agree if you want to talk about where you're at now as to what you would be willing to pay, that gives us an idea to look.
Well, I'll use the same logic you used on me earlier about the masters. You said you don't want to close that loop because you want everyone to come in.
Yeah.
I don't want to close the loop on somebody who's making 400,000 if they're the best qualified applicant. I want to see them. And I'm willing to pay if they have the track record that shows that we have the student success at where they are now. What I'm frustrated about is that we typically get superintendents that don't have the level of superintendency experience. This is our opportunity now to get that tenured superintendent who has a proven track record. Or we can go the way we've always gone, which is not bad too, someone who's up and coming.
Yeah.
We need to understand what we're looking for, and I think this is our opportunity to look for the talent at the top level. And added that we're asking for this to be national. There are markets that are paying more because the states pay more.
Absolutely.
Which means I don't want to nullify their availability if they're talented enough. So that's why I say, using that same logic, why not open it up and ask, for all of the candidates, regardless of range? That's why I think the salary question is important.
Well, it is, no question about it, it's important. If the direction, I sense the direction changed in terms of my perception. It was not that.
It's not important for us to say how much,
Yeah.
but that we would be open to appropriate compensation, which could mean 400,000, and I'm not saying that's what I want to pay.
Right.
But it would allow that window to be as wide as you said, to catch folks to come in. That's all I'm saying. Maybe we find that perfect person that's at a much lower range, that's up and coming, and that's where we make the selection. But I don't want to nullify that. That's what I'm trying to.
Well,
I also think landing on a dollar amount is something best done in closed session when we have an actual candidate that we're evaluating. That would be.
Well, that was my point originally, but then I was responding to what you said, and I mistook what you meant.
Well, it's all public anyway.
Yeah.
As we talk about, it's all negotiated, it's all public. We're going to know how much they're making over there. I mean, granted, when we get to the nitty gritty, yes, it's in closed session.
Yeah.
But we should still have a wide enough net. Your response was that you wouldn't think anybody with 400,000 would even entertain the idea. I want them to entertain the idea. I want them to look at our district to help us forward. And I don't want salary to be a barrier. So.
That's exactly what I meant about waiting and see who we have. I kind of got to change, and it's my perception, not what you said.
Sure.
So I would say that if that's the direction that the board wants to go, there are some, I guarantee you, there are some superintendents making $400,000 or $500,000 a year that would most likely, after we do an evaluation, I'm pretty sure they would rise to the top, at least in the top 6, to be considered. And we've had those conversations with other boards. One board, not in too distant past, was talking a little bit along this same line. We had this conversation, and they talked about, well, we don't want to go, nothing over. No contract that starts with a 4. That meant 400 or above. No, we don't want to see anybody that starts with a 4. Well, when we got right down to it, there was one started with a 5. And they wanted to talk to him because we explained to him what his experience was and that he was definitely interested in their district. Now, that's not who they ended up hiring, but they came really close. He came in the top 2. And they had some serious discussions. And the decision wasn't about salary at the end of the day.
Peter wants to.
Yeah, Peter, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Just real briefly, regionally competitive, people understand that. They understand what that means, and they understand what your region might be. They also know that they can access that information the same as we're going to access it, and Rick is going to bring that to you later. The reason we're making this suggestion is to buy us all some time and not close up that funnel at the very beginning, as you said, and therefore, and also to encourage you, as Rick said, to think in terms of total compensation. And we'll come back to you when we get close to, or maybe right in the middle of the interviewing process, provide this information to you, and then allow you to assess what is the value of this position to the district and to you as a school board. Regionally competitive lets people know what you're thinking about. It doesn't know, they don't know what the number is. And so you don't want somebody who's going to apply only for a number. There are other reasons, believe it or not, why superintendents want to be someplace and do the job. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's true. So are we okay on waiting on talking about the decision? I think I got a sense now. Does everybody kind of agree with keeping that open?
Yep.
And then we'll see what surfaces, and we'll have information for you to compare. And we'll have the information about the individuals for you to consider well, do they look like they're worth that? And you'll have to make that decision ultimately. Okay, I think, is that it?
I think that's it. Now we'll go into advertising. We're getting down to where we have to talk about the calendar, so I'll move on.
Yep, I'll go quickly on this. So within the next couple of days, we will already start to advertise for the position. There are the typical sites that we would use, TASA, Texas ISD, your website, our website. But there are other packages that you all can and probably should consider if you want to really get a broader reach. We did send a packet to you all that looked like this in your email. It's a prettier color. But on page 8, it outlines 3 different packages. On page 8, on the slide, we give the pricing of each of the 3 packages. We typically would recommend for a district this size, and for you all, the second package, $3,400, would be more than adequate. But it gives you really more exposure statewide, nationally. There's included in that is AASA job site posting, the Education Week print. I believe there's 2 postings, two group ads in the Ed Week's print publication. Links to all major job boards. So you're just casting that net wider in terms of advertising for the position. And then, of course, there's also ALICE and NAT. If you're interested in posting on those, that's an additional $520. But again, looking for the right candidate is casting that net as far as we can. The question is, are you interested? Would you be interested in one of those additional packages?
I think I've heard the board say previously that we definitely are interested in posting in ALICE and NABC, just to make sure that we're reaching a diverse candidate pool. But I'll defer to others on looking at the different packages, what you feel.
The higher end package is necessary. We think the lower, the
Yeah.
low one just gives you one listing and all of that. The next one gives you multiple opportunities, but that's your choice to do.
Do folks have a preference? Can everybody see?
I would like for us
package 1, 2, and 3?
to be logical and be good stewards of our money. If, this is what we hired them for, is
Right.
to give us good recommendations. And so if you think that multiple advertisements can go out and the tentacles can be stretched with 3,400, I can go with that.
Easy.
I can support that recommendation.
You did say in addition,
The additional, the ALICE and
TASA and
Yes.
Texas ISD, Judson, your website,
Those
our
are all
website.
free.
Those are already.
Right, so that's already part of,
Right,
Ma'am.
correct.
but additionally,
Yes. Ed
I could
Week
go with
and
the
AASA, and they don't do them for free.
I could go with the median.
And then we agree with you, Ms. Rodriguez, the ALICE and NABC is critical. Okay?
So other folks are
fine.
are fine with the 3,400?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
And then, last thing before we get to the calendars, I think, just as a reminder, we recommend having a full page on your website dedicated to the search, and you can see the list of things that will be included, the survey, the calendar in progress, our leadership profile, links to the different avenues for advertising or applying for the applicants. But we would work, I believe we'll work with Nicole and Lexi to get all of that taken care of. Are there any questions about the website?
Is
So
that already
communications
queued up to
department?
go?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
definitely.
Is there a specific, who would that go to, Dr. Taganot? Would that be directed to you if they have questions or information to
Yes.
get? Okay.
And then, Peter, you want to talk about communications with the media? We've already had an opportunity for that, haven't we? So,
Yes. What I wanted to know is, have you established, I might have missed it because I was out of touch for a little while and couldn't hear. Have you established who the board liaison is going to be for the search?
Yes.
yes,
I'm assuming me
me.
and
Yeah.
Nola? Okay.
Yeah.
So what we recommend is, of course, that the board liaison deal with the media, unless the board has a different policy to do that. And we are available at your direction to respond to you for questions that you feel have to do with the search process and share that information with you. If you would like, we'll even prepare some information for you. But we could also talk directly with them. But we always prefer that the board liaison or board president deal directly with the media, unless you call upon us for some other reason, and we'd be glad to do it at your direction.
Okay. Yeah, that seems right.
Makes sense.
That make sense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next slide has to do with background checks. And for years, our firm has used Baker Eubanks and most recently Stewart and Associates. Having two firms allows us to use the one that can give us the best turnaround time. And typically it takes 7 to 10 days to do a background check. The minimum we suggest that you do, and whether you use these firms or someone else is okay with us, but we suggest that a deep background check be done on at least the preferred applicant. That means when you get down to one. But there is another option. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then within what these two firms offer, there's a basic option, which is typically used for principals or assistant superintendents. But then the comprehensive one includes, and again, this is described in writing in that same document that Jody just held up. And the comprehensive one has to do with a look at social media and then regular media, and mentions of the preferred candidate. Now, depending upon which option you look at in terms of the budget, if there's going to be a quick turnaround between the first round of interviews and the second round, we recommend that once you identify the people for the second round, that you begin to look at their backgrounds through the background check process of the 3 preferred applicants coming back for the second round. So just kind of keep that in mind. You don't have to decide tonight on this, but be thinking about it. The cost of the two, the basic one, I believe is $1,100. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. $1,100. I think.
$1,100 and then $1,950.
And that's per candidate?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is, and as you notice in that, the news media review is for the last 5 years, and then the social media. That's pretty important. No.
Yeah, but the total thing is going to give a complete look at credit, criminal record checks, both in counties where the person has lived, statewide, nationally. So the criminal record checks are conducted there. They check on the certification of the degree granting institutions of the individual. It's a very thorough approach, similar to what you would do with a background check on somebody who's coming to work in your school, but it's also goes far beyond that to look, as I said, at national and credit checks and things of that nature. So pretty good description in the description that we suggested you look at that Jody held up earlier. Okay?
Yes.
So we'll come back to you and ask you which one you want to use, and then after you decide on the calendar, we'll look at some options there. So here we are with the calendar. Let me just point out a couple of things. So we're starting with today, and here we are at the planning meeting, and the planning meeting's almost over. Thank you for your patience and forbearance and all of this. There'll be a formal position announcement. It's already been announced on our website, and it actually is 2 days following the signing of the letter of agreement, and that's been signed. And as I said earlier, the applications have started, and the advertising will start literally tomorrow. And then applications have already started. Then down the online survey, as Nola pointed out, will start on the 1st and end on the 24th. And we picked the 24th, not arbitrarily, but because of this next line, which is when we suggest that the engagement of stakeholders and the board take place. We're not locked into waiting until then to talk with board members. We could do that earlier, actually. But the purpose of this is to do both the survey and what we call the listening sessions for the leadership profile development. And we picked out these dates, although the 20th and 23rd are not etched in concrete. And if you have some reasons why those aren't good times to do it, either because of the days of the week or something else that's happening, we tried to stay away from your spring break, which I believe is around the 13th or 14th of March, starting then and going to the 16th, I think. And then
It will be myself and Jody coming for the in-person for those 2 full days, and kind of based on our schedules, we would like to do it Monday and Tuesday. If you could let us know if there's anything in the district that would, pull the teachers away or be a conflict that would be too disruptive.
Yes.
This is already disruptive at some. So.
Is, Dr. Taganoff,
Yes, ma'am.
is the 20th student and employee holiday?
It is not.
Okay.
We attend school that day.
Okay.
Yeah, I was surprised about that.
Yeah, I remember
It
when,
must have been some.
we
kind of
always had that
trade-off.
day off.
Yeah, it must have been
They
some
don't do
kind of
that anymore?
trade-off to get something,
Okay.
some other day off.
If you want
Yes.
Jody to come and do that student group on the 15th, because she lives in Elgin and can drive here and do that student group.
Oh, perfect.
And so we can have, with these two, we can have that one-off, one on occasion, but we'd like to really focus. It helps with your advertising of it and communication. And also, if we wait till February 1st, we can really do a blitz about get online and do the survey and that sort of thing.
Nicole, do you know when the ESAC committees are?
I do. I believe they're usually the same week as the SAC meetings. You go to is. Yep. Should be listed there.
February 15th.
It looks like February 15th on that day. Those are usually
Do both
at
of those.
5,
And when are the when's the student meeting?
11:30. And we can make some adjustments in time. It would just be a phone call too.
So that would be 2 meetings that day if we can get them a little closer or something
We can try to move the
Student.
staff one up.
up, or in the student, okay.
Yeah,
That'd be
I'm
great.
happy to do that.
That'd be great. Okay, we'll keep working with you on that.
And I think I'd be curious from the other board members, like, because it says here, board and stakeholder engagement wouldn't start until, so you said you could move the board member conversations up. I would be anxious to do that sooner, personally. Do other board members feel the same, that we could knock those out? Those would probably be phone calls, right? And,
Yeah,
Whenever.
yes.
okay,
Maybe the first couple of weeks of February. we
yeah,
can get
yeah,
this.
that would be great.
Sorry, Peter, I interrupted, and
No,
now,
not yet. Those are important questions and important clarifications, and I like the idea of, I think I even mentioned doing the board member interviews sooner rather than later, and for a couple of reasons, but that's an excellent idea. So, okay, so then the idea is that shortly after we complete the stakeholder engagement interviews here in the week of the 20th or so, then we'll come back to you literally about 12 days later and bring to you, maybe even less than that, bring you the leadership profile report for your consideration. This will be a report that in a district the size of Judson, I'm going to guess is going to be 25 to 30 pages long. However, we're going to present the first 10 pages, which is what we call the executive summary of it, but it has the draft language of a profile or a narrative description and listing of professional competencies and attributes of the superintendent. And that's what the board will look at, prioritize, amend, and finally approve at a meeting on March 6th, if that is a good day to schedule it. And then following that is a period of time, and we've provided only 31 days from March 7th through April 7th. And those 31 days include about 8 Saturdays and Sundays. But the idea is that we'll use that time to take the profile, ask questions, collect evidence and information about the successful track record of the individuals whom we are screening, and put that information into application files and do reference checks. And we'll show you the questions that we're asking them so that you know the type of perspective that we're trying to get on these people who have expressed interest in this position. So 31 days to turn that all around and come back to you on April 10th and bring you a slate of candidates. But before we do the slate of candidates, we'll have a seminar on the interviews and the final stages of the search process. The seminar will last about an hour, sometimes less, because it's information that many of you know about because you've conducted interviews in your past. But the idea is to hear this information at the same time in one place and ask questions and ask what-if situations about those interviewing processes. You, by that way, remember earlier I mentioned that you will submit questions, and you will have submitted those questions, and we'll present that to you in closed session because that's confidential information since it's going to happen in confidential interviews. And then we'll present the slate to you, and we've talked about that and how that will work. And we'll suggest that the board do as you decided now, face-to-face interviews, the end of the week. Now, it's not mandatory that you do it on, these days happen to be, if I recall correctly, a Friday and a Saturday. It's not necessary, but if that works out a lot of times for board schedules. If you'd rather do it on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, that can be done too.
This is actually a Wednesday and a Thursday, Peter, because.
The 12th, 13th?
Yeah, we were trying to move it along so
Yeah.
that by Friday, Saturday, they would be able to start their second round.
Oh, got it.
It's pretty
Okay.
collapsed in there.
Thanks, got it. Okay, so at the conclusion, we'll be with you and help you identify those people for the next round. And then if you're going to do a quick turnaround, as Nola just described, then it'll be, we strongly recommend that you look at doing the background checks for 3 people, so that way you have that information back to you soon at the conclusion of the second round. The second round then would happen, what day, is that a Thursday also? Or?
No, the 15th is a Saturday, so they would hear the slate on Monday, and on Wednesday and Thursday evenings, late afternoon to evening, you would have your 3 candidates one night, 3 candidates the other night. They're about 90-minute, 75-minute interviews with 15 minutes in between. And then you have your next one, and it's a later night for those 2 nights. And then they come back on Saturday, and for the round 2, those meetings start at noon. So on the 15th, it would be noon up until the next morning with 1 candidate.
Right.
Then the second candidate comes in at noon on the 16th up
Right.
until the morning of the 17th. And then the third candidate comes in at noon on the 17th to the morning of the 18th. And then you would have your debrief on Tuesday, the 18th, after those 3 days with your final 3 candidates. Sorry,
it.
Peter, I was just.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm glad you clarified. Okay, I have a calendar in front of me now, sorry. Okay, so then I identify the preferred candidate, and you'll have the information, should be back on the third-party background checks. And then, again, we talked about a site visit that we always recommend. And then all the board members would be involved in this due diligence process. So typically, 2 or 3 board members would conduct either an on-site or a virtual site visit, and the other 4 board members would call on the telephone other people that are references for the individual you're considering. And the process here of the due diligence is not to make the decision, it's to affirm your pursuit of one person at this phase of the search. And then you'll be prepared on the 24th or even sooner to name the lone finalist and start the 21-day clock.
I don't think they can do it sooner than the 24th, because if they don't get, well, yes, they could start with their top 3 at the end of the 14th. You would have at the 14th,
Right.
you now have narrowed to 3 candidates, and then we could do the background checks. That gives 10 days.
Yeah, so, yeah, and that can be done.
Yes.
So that, yeah, so you might have that information back by the end of, by the 21st, so 7 days there.
Yes.
What time of day on the 14th are they done?
That'd be at the end of their, it's whatever they could do. I'm assuming you wouldn't want to make a decision from 6 to 3 at 10 o'clock at night. You probably would want to sleep on it and come back maybe for coffee or something the next day.
We've done it before.
Okay, you could do it.
Yeah, I
You
think,
could do it.
you know, I think keeping both options might be prudent. I'll also name that we have a regularly scheduled board meeting on April the 20th. And so that could also be a potential day for naming the lone finalist.
That would need, you would need to do your site visit reference checks in a kind of a blitz on the afternoon of the 18th and all day on the 19th, and maybe part of the day on the 20th to get that site visit. That would probably make it virtual.
Yeah, and we do have like we have two options on the calendar here, and where it's compressing is in that recruitment phase, and so that's something we can discuss as a board. Because I think now we're getting to the point where it's like, we do want to work backwards from our election, and this was something that Nola and I think they had come to us originally with only option A, and I said, you know, the election is on May 6th, and we typically swear our new board members in at the next regular meeting. Is that correct? Is that what we've typically done after an election?
Yes.
And that's on May 18th. And so both of these calendars get us in before that. I just don't, I just wanted to name that as well as a factor as we're looking at these calendars and evaluating them. And I know, Mr. Macias, that you've expressed like, this process should take as long as it takes and to find a good candidate. And I think that we could identify in the interview phase whether that's going to be, and if that's something we need to extend or not, right? We wouldn't get to May 15th and make it.
Obviously, that would be contentious, but sometimes we need to have hard discussions about things.
Right,
And so certainly, depending on what that first slate of candidates looks like, we would evaluate that need. What I don't want to do is rush. And again, I'm really sensitive about the condensed schedule because I feel we're rushing. When everyone was interviewed, they all gave much longer calendars to do this in the best manner. 3 interviews in one day, I can tell you, that's going to be tough.
It's tough.
I mean, so I'm not looking forward to that. I'm going to see if we can try to adjust that because that's just a lot to do in one day. 2 is good.
Yes.
3, good Lord. So if there's no time for it, again, I'm not going to feel like we got to rush because then we're going to make a decision because we're tired. And so I reserve that till we see the first slate, but obviously still look for other opportunities to spread that out to 2 per day. So yes, I wanted to agree with you on that, Ms. Rodriguez. But also, I think it's also 10 days after the election, we have to have a special meeting to swear people in. So if it doesn't make that regular board meeting, we have a special meeting prior to that, because we have that 10-day period.
Which 10 days would be the 16th,
Yes,
no?
because we have to canvass the votes and officially swear in the new board members. So that's what.
So the 15th is still sneaking in under there, but.
I think that's a really good point. We don't recommend rushing anything on this decision. And one of the things that we do in that regard, because a lot of people, the press will ask and candidates will ask, when does this close? As far as we're concerned, it never closes till you pick the finalist. And that's what we tell them. This is open until it's filled, as far as we're concerned. And hopefully that's your discussion too, if they ask.
Yeah, SAISD here locally, I'm sure you follow the superintendent, and they had to go back to the drawing board, and they want it, and they're happy with their candidate, but they didn't rush it. They had interim in place, everything, so it was good. As long as we make the best decision for our community.
So once you get to the screening and the interviews and reference check, that's our recruiting, you can see the difference there. One's about 31 days and one's 17 days. And
That's on
then-
the calendar.
Yeah, on the option B. And then we start with the seminar and the slate. That's about 2 weeks difference there. And we allow you more breathing room and frankly, time for us to turn around and contact, because, for example, if we present a slate on the 10th and you decide these are the people, they only have 1 day to make arrangements to get here. on the 12th. So that was a pretty fast turnaround with option A, but option B allows 4 days for them to make arrangements to coming. Of course, they could have a schedule that they would have to come on the 13th, the next day. So we usually have a little bit of time there, and then the same on the final one. If you make your decision from your first round on April the 1st, we have 5 days before they're coming back for the second round in option B. In option A, they're coming back the next day. It's pretty quick turnaround.
So that if I'm going to just like play that back, my understanding. So where I'm seeing in option B, the compression is actually happening on your timeline, right? Your turnaround on like screening candidates and bringing them to us. And that actually option B, even though we're getting done a little bit earlier than the other one, is actually not leisurely, but is a little bit more spacious on the timeline of the turnaround between the different rounds.
Right.
Okay.
You'll notice that there's a 2-week difference between April 10th, March 27th. But at the bottom, it's May 15th and May 8th. It's only 1 week, and that gave you an extra some days, and frankly us, to get candidates here and to contact them and make all those logistical arrangements. Mr. Martinez is right. It's grueling, and you're tired. And so I think that's the, difference between.
You're going to be worn out anyway.
Yeah, you will be.
So my question is, does that give you all enough time to do the screening you need to do?
Well, we have talked. Go ahead, Peter.
You go ahead.
Oh, we've talked about it, and it does cause us some anxiety. However, we have committed that we will get information from you before the collection time. We have midwinter conference next week, so we can, frankly, we recruit all the time. We're all the time talking to people who will say, my child's junior in high school, I don't want to move for a couple of years, and then we're checking back in, what are you thinking? Are you going to be looking for a move? We're all the time talking to people. But it does make us have to commit to those 2.5 weeks there as really intense for us.
Yeah, it's our interview process condenses quite a bit, and that concerns us a little bit. We, like Nola said, we're recruiting all the time, and we're going to be at Midwinter, and then we're going to be at AASA, which is in San Antonio this year, which is good for Texas superintendents. We'll be able to see a lot more of them here. But we're always, a lot of superintendents have already seen that we got this job, so they're calling us.
Right.
Say, I hear you have that job.
Yeah.
What do you think? And we're saying, well, look into it. Go on the website, learn a little bit about the district, and then talk to us. We'll see what, we don't know at this point. We don't know what's going to happen, and, it's a process. So, but we never stop talking to them.
Right.
And the process of recruitment, focused recruitment, looking for people who aren't looking for a job, depends greatly on the leadership profile that you approve, and you're not going to approve it until March 6th. And then we're going to have real criteria around which we can develop interview questions. And that gives us, this calendar, option B, gives us 17 days, including 4 Saturdays and Sundays. And it's not a lot of time to do focus recruiting and reference checks and prepare that information for you to look at on the 27th. Because that's when you're going to look at it. And we're going to want to put that information and make sure all that information is up to date and included in the applications of each of the people we're going to bring to you in the recommended slate. And we're going to have to do that before the 27th. We'll probably have to do it, the 26th and 25th are a weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And I do have a calendar with me.
That's right.
25th and 26th.
Right.
So it's not a lot of time to do what we have to do in terms of the screening interviews and reference checks. And by the way, we usually do 3 or 4 of those a day, at the most 4, but usually three or so a day. And we usually do 12 to 15 because we want to make sure that we've looked at all the people who appear on paper and by the initial checking that we've done on them are a good match for your leadership profile.
Do you do those as a panel, or do you split them up?
We do them all
We
together.
do them all together.
And we have to all agree if it's some, I mean, if we don't have a split vote and say, well, okay, we'll negotiate this. We want to all agree that these are the very best ones for your district.
That can take a while.
And that takes a while. That takes
arm wrestling.
some discussion.
You're getting weaker and weaker, Vic, with my arm wrestling.
Just one thing I did hear, Mr. Macias, you're interested in maybe extending the initial initial interviews to 3 days, possibly, versus 2?
Well, yeah, as long as we're trying to not have 3 interviews in one day. That would be my concern, just because it's a lot, 90 minutes per, and going through it again and again. I mean, 2 seems optimal. It sounds like you guys agree that 2 is best. We may not have that schedule, or may not have that opportunity. But again, if there is flexibility,
There's flexibility.
then I certainly would like to have 2 per day.
Like if you
But-
did option A, you could do 12th, 13th, 14th. If you did option B, you could start on March 30th.
And let me, I want to pick up on the 90 minutes because it's a 2-hour block of time, which builds in a little bit of a break for you in between interviews. And the 2 hours goes like this. It takes 15 minutes to introduce the board to the candidate and to allow the candidate an opening statement. And then so that's 15 minutes. And then we recommend 75 minutes or about 5 minutes each for 15 questions that reflect the profile. So now we're already at 90 minutes. And then we ask, are there questions that the candidate has for the board, which is a very telling part of the interview because it gives you a sense of, have they done research on the district? Do they know what's important to us based on the profile? Are they asking questions that reflect the profile? These are things that you'll pick up in that closing part of that interview. So it's more like an hour and 45 minutes as opposed to an hour and 15 minutes or so. So keep that in mind. So it's a 2-hour block of time for each of those interviews that you're going to conduct. Unless you choose to shorten it. You can shorten it, but usually the number of questions that we get from a board is typically going to be in the 12 to 15 range based upon the profile.
So what are folks drawn to? I'm personally, I know it puts a lot of pressure on you, but I'm personally drawn to option B. But that's just my opinion.
I agree. I'm drawn to option B because that gives us some processing time between the 2 sessions. I like to go back and think about things and not make a snap judgment, so that gives a little bit of time in between. And also, if we're asking them to come in person, for them to make travel arrangements and that kind of thing, that puts a pretty tight turnaround for them.
Wondering if there's a way to mention the April 20th board meeting. I wonder if there's a way to adjust this by 3 days. Since they already have a board meeting. Whoops.
Would you want to announce the lone finalist on the 20th of April at the full meeting, Ms. Rodriguez? We can
Or
certainly
would you
do
prefer a
that.
special board meeting?
Yeah, I would just put that out to the whole board, actually. So on option B, would we want to make the adjustment of naming the lone finalist on the regularly scheduled April 20th. Is that what you said?
Yes. Is that what you said earlier?
I think so. I'm pulling up the calendar again.
Yes.
Okay. And then, I'm doing the math of where that
It'd be May
lands.
the 11th.
Okay, so that still puts us in the window before we would need to canvass the votes and things. Yeah. That's okay with me.
Does the Easter weekend make a difference?
Oh, that's good.
It is the 8th and 9th,
It is.
Okay.
Thank you.
and that could matter in terms of
A
your
lot of people.
preferred candidate.
Uh-huh.
You could do that the following week, now that you have a few days anyway.
Because the 7th is Good Friday.
Yes,
Right.
and the 8th.
And I think that you would need to be sensitive.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
I know that would be something I would prefer.
Do you have school
Sensitivity.
on the 7th, on Good Friday, or on the 10th?
No.
Okay.
No, we do
The
have school
10th
on
is not a holiday,
There's-
but the 7th is a
I
holiday.
The
should have
7th is.
checked that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, potentially you could do the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or you could do the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th for your final three.
Okay, that still gives us enough time if we're waiting until April 20th to either do it before or after.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if they do 10, 11, 12, 13, you might buy yourself a little time up here.
Yeah.
This doesn't impact this calendar, but fun fact, the 28th is a holiday in San Antonio of April.
April?
Battle of Flowers. Big deal.
Big deal.
Yes,
All Fiesta week.
Fiesta.
So it sounds like people are fine with B, making the adjustments of
Right.
the vote on the lone finalist being on April 20th, and then the flexibility of the second round of interviews being right before the Easter holiday or right
Right.
after. Okay.
Just consider that Easter.
Well, that's good. Well,
I don't have to be there on that one.
at the time, we can make it work.
Yeah, you could, y'all could do it.
And Ms. Rodriguez, why are we picking the 24th or the 20th instead of, say, the 30th of April or May 1st? Is there a reason for
Because
that?
we have to have the 21 days and we would want to have the final vote on the superintendent be with the current board that has been in all of the interviews and things like that. So if we have it if we name the lone finalist any later than that, then we would,
It looks like you plugged in the 15th of May anyways, because that would be the last day for us to, or almost the second to last day to canvass votes.
right.
So the 15th, well, option A seems like it would work.
Say again, sorry?
Option A looked like it would work still, if that's the objective, to have the current board vote. What's the apprehension with A? Because you did say you like B.
What I like about B is more how things are a little bit more spaced out on our interview schedule. So like, we're starting that earlier. If you look, I think we would start our interviews March 31st versus starting that April 10th or April 12th. So we start our interviews a full 2 weeks earlier, so that allows us to spread that out a little bit more and accommodate, maybe having only 2 candidates per night instead of 3. And so it just gives us a little more space and flexibility. Whereas in option A, we go from our first slate of candidates on the 13th and immediately on the 15th, 2 days later, start final interviews with our finalists.
Option B would accommodate your idea of wanting to have 2 interviews a day. For you, Mr. Missy.
Yeah, no, that's appropriate and it's attractive. I guess the thing is in superintendent lore, if you will, there have always been reference checks that didn't catch everything. And so your concern with the timing to conduct a thorough reference check is going to be important, because we don't want to get to the finalist.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, we miss something. So as long as you are certain, like I said, all of this is flexible. We can adjust this timeline on the fly as well. And as I've shared before with Ms. Rodriguez, I may endorse the plan, but I do also reserve the right to say, hey, wait, we need to adjust as we go forward. And as long as we keep that mindset, I'm open. But I certainly want to know, once we look and get to that point where you're doing your reference checks, again, no reason to rush. I mean, just let's do it right. And that's the only concern I would have, based on what you had mentioned in terms of the reference part. But option B, I do like because of that. But I don't know why we couldn't do option B and still have the appointment on May 15th or something like that. Why the 8th is all I'm saying. But I understand the rationale, and that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
It would be the
Yeah.
11th if we move it
Yeah.
to the announcement on the 20th at our regular meeting, and then the 11th would be the actual vote.
And having it in a public meeting, the candidate usually comes, and they're introduced, and if it's a public meeting, a little more few more people come.
Is that regular meeting in April that you're talking about, is that normally a very busy meeting for decisions you have to make that may be boundaries or other things that?
Budget.
I mean, it's not final
Yeah.
budget decision or anything like that. We typically have a lot of meetings during that time because we're having budget meetings and the budget workshops, but I can't think of anything particularly like cyclical that we know would be on the April agenda. I think it would be normal business.
Okay.
But that's a good question.
Well, sometimes it's a downer if you have one that's always a tough meeting.
Sub-meeting and you do that, yeah.
That Finalists coming in there, and that's just like, oh.
Yeah. Okay.
How would you like to just take B and adjust at,
Yeah.
I'm putting, here's what I've adjusted. Board and stakeholder engagement, February 20th and 21st. And we will have those February 15th and a few others that we'll add. Come down and do the initial interviews March 30th, March 31st, and April 1st. That, you'll like that better. Come on down.
Oh, I just remembered one thing.
Oh.
I have a medical procedure scheduled for March 30th.
Okay,
So
Okay.
I could do it the day before or the day after, but on that day, I could not do it.
okay. So
April 2nd, maybe?
Yes.
it's a Sunday. I don't know if you want to do that. But you could do the 29th, two of them, and then the 31st, two of them, and April 1st. Will you be okay to sit?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the board interviews, the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th then it'll start at noon on the 10th, so that'll be okay. And by the way, those schedules for people that work or need that flexibility, you don't have to be there at noon. A couple of board members will come at noon, a couple will come for a tour in the afternoon, and then the overall meeting with the board, with the candidate, is in the evening.
Okay.
But it is 3 nights, you have to eat out, and you have to, be away from your families. And then on the 13th, after the morning coffee, is when you would decide your preferred candidate. And then it'd be a week for you to do site visit. We will help during that meeting figure out how that will take place and get the reference checks. The candidate will help organize some of that as well, and then the announcement on the 20th. And the appointment then will be a vote on May the 11th, and that probably would be a special meeting, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And the leadership profile would be March 6th, not just the week of.
Yeah.
We're very specific that
Right.
it is March 6th.
Right.
Okay.
Say again.
The leadership profile, can you set a special meeting on March the 6th?
Which is a Monday.
I think that works for me. Does that work for other people?
I mean, it could
Innovation
be,
Committee, but we can move it.
Yeah, okay.
you can have another day that week. It's just a matter of us getting busy with that profile.
Well, and the Innovation Committee meeting is maybe only an hour or something, and so we could do it immediately after that too, if we needed to, so, yes, yeah.
And the profile meeting typically takes no longer than 45 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
It could take an hour, but usually it's 45 minutes. We've done it as few as 20 minutes.
okay.
It's okay.
That's good. That's good, yeah.
Would you repeat those dates, please? Because now I'm going to record.
You betcha. The changes on option B are the dates that we are looking at. Board stakeholder, everything's okay until the board stakeholder engagement interview will be in the focus groups February 20th and 21st.
Okay, got that.
On the next leadership profile, we'll present that to you on March the 6th.
Got that.
Move down to the seminar is fine. The slate will be presented on the 27th. And then the board initial interviews on the 29th, 2 of them, the 31st, 2 of them, and April 1st, 2 of them. At the conclusion of your second one on April the 1st, members of this team, probably not all of us, but members of this team will show up and debrief and have a process to help you decide your top 3.
April 1st.
April 1st.
So it's the 29th,
31st, April 1st.
okay.
Yes. And I will, by the way, I'll have a summary for you of this meeting. I'll be writing that up. And then the board will meet to identify at the conclusion of the first round, that'll be April the 1st. We will begin the background checks April the 3rd, because they won't be there on April 1st. And then you will interview your preferred candidates beginning Monday, April 10th, the 11th, the 12th, and at the conclusion of the third candidate on the 13th is when you will meet to debrief and decide your lone finalist.
Okay.
Identify that person on the second round at the conclusion on April the 13th. Now, you started your background checks on April the 3rd, so you have plenty of time to get that information, which I appreciate, thank you. And then you would do your third-party background checks are completed, and your due diligence, you will do that between April 13th and the meeting on April 20th. And we'll talk about that particular meeting, because you may want to have some closed session, just to hear what I talked to this reference, I talked to this reference, and hear what the reference is.
Okay.
Nola, one other date change, please, and that would be, and now that you've changed the dates for the community engagement till the 21st, could you have the online survey close on the 22nd?
You betcha, we could. Is
That way,
okay?
that information would be more, would be available for the composition of the leadership profile report.
Yes. Okay,
Okay.
is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Do we think we have consensus?
Do we have consensus, everybody? Yes? Okay, I see nodding heads.
Not in stone, right? Still, we can adjust it if we need to. Want that on the record? 'Cause I sure as
It's
heck-
on the record
I
abundantly,
will,
Mr. Macias.
I will make a call to do this adjustment if we need to, yes.
I apologize, I called you the wrong name a moment ago. I
It was in the
apologize.
ballpark.
I should have said Mr. M, and then I would have been right. I apologize. All right. Here we go. I think we're good on this. I don't think so. No? I think we're good. Schedule with dates and times. We'll do our board meetings separate.
I'm putting all of this on my Outlook calendar as soon as we're done, so it'll be Outlook official.
Good. I will summarize the meeting. The next slide just talks about the takeaways, and we've been taking good notes of it. When I send it, I'll send it as a draft. If you see anything wrong, we want the record to reflect what the discussion was. So if it's not accurate in some way, because I missed it, please let us know. But I think we have everything. What I will do is send each of you, we'll collect some dates, send some dates to you, and we'll do all the sign up for the one-on-ones by email, if that works for you. Okay. Okay.
Is there anything else you want to bring up tonight? Have we covered everything you anticipated?
And more.
And more?
Do you need us to vote on the calendar piece of it, or just the consensus is enough to move forward?
Yes.
Okay.
It's plenty for us, and we'll move forward. And I think, as we've mentioned, you know, we may get at a point where we go, whew, we're not where we need to be,
Yeah.
and we will come back to you. This is a dialogue. It's just a start.
Right.
Place for us to start, and can make adjustments as we need to.
Okay.
But we cannot thank you enough for the time tonight and for
Thank
your
you.
attention.
Thank you.
It's important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, it's going through a lot of information, but it is critical, so thank you
Thank you.
very much.
All right, so.
Peter, did you have something?
No, just to say thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we will not be going into closed session. It was not needed, and no action needed on item 4A. So there being no further business, we will adjourn this meeting at 7:37.
Pretty good.
Not bad.
Y'all are smart people. Get this thing done. We
Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
This is good.
Peter.
Here.
I'm so sorry.
It's a discretion. Input.
I think we give it a read. If you have any questions in between and you